we live in the unknowns. And in the unknowns is where you find your growth. We see this in all of the movies, right? Where the hero's just navigating through things. So along the way, the hero is going to find a mentor. Okay. They have a mentor who guides them. They have friends. They have people who are against them. They learn new skills. They come to a point of a dark cave, right? Where they're like, I'm done. I can't do this. There is no way I can fight this monster. There's no way I can overcome this. That mentor cannot do it for them. And so in that darkness, you go, do you know what? I can rise out of this. And so you step out of that cave and you're equipped with a new mindset, a new skill set, a new perspective on life, right? You've gained all these things in the unknowns, in the dark scariness, and you're like, oh my gosh, I can do this.
Welcome to the Confident Mompreneur podcast, where you can find solid advice along with warm guidance on motherhood, business, relationships, health, wellness, and everything you need to help add to your confidence and zest for life. And with interesting guests from all around the world, you'll hear real and relatable stories with impact and nuggets of wisdom to help you or the mompreneur meet the challenges of life with clarity and success. Now let's welcome your mompreneur host, Carrie Blaney.
Welcome on today, Elysia.
Thank you, Carrie.
We were just discussing before how it's difficult having unique names, especially when you go on podcasts and things like this. So I'm so grateful that, we got that done and it was correct when I said it, right?
Yes, you got it. I know it's spelled different. So, and that's just part of it. So, Elysia and Kyrie.
Yes.
So amazing. So excited to be here on your podcast today.
Yeah, I'm so excited. We've been Facebook mutuals for a little bit, and man, I just love seeing all your stuff, all the amazing things that you're doing and the impact that you're having. So I messaged her and was like, I gotta have you on. So I'm so glad you're here. For those who don't know you, do you want to start us out by introducing yourself a little bit about who you are and what you do?
Yes. So, like Carrie said, my name's Alysia Butler, and I'm the founder of a nonprofit called the Hope Hero Foundation. And our mission is catching kids before they fall and empowering them to become heroes of their own stories. And lots of times people are like, well, how did you get started with this? I'll just give you like three key catalysts that kind of launched me down this suicide prevention path. And the first one is that I know what it's like personally to have a child who doesn't want to live. And my little boy was just 7 years old when we went through this. And daily he would say how much he hated himself, that the world and our family would be better off without him. And we knew he was suffering and struggling, but I didn't know how bad it was until he tried to attempt right in front of me. And as a parent, that is something you never want to face. And most don't know how to handle it. I didn't either. My mom's a psychologist, so thankfully I did have that. We got him the help that he needed. I actually stepped away from the classroom as a teacher to come home and save my own child's life, but not necessarily save it, but empower him to believe in himself. And the cool thing is, Carrie, is that little boy is now a kicker on the East Coast for a college football team.
Oh, that is so amazing.
Right? So like going from this little boy that didn't want to live into this man who's honestly, he's living his dreams. And you can do this. Like he is the reason why I do what I do. And that I've seen it firsthand walking a child through this. And also, like I said, I was a teacher. So I taught ninth grade English for almost 14 years. And one of the things was mythology, the hero's journey, going through those stages of how to be your own hero with my students. And then in 2016, my sister-in-law lost her struggles to her mental health. And she was a second mom to my kids, one of my best friends. And so when you lose someone in your family to mental health, it changes your entire outlook on life. It changes how you think about life and death. And death has been one of the greatest teachers about life in my entire life, that we only have this one chance, right? We get to live each day though. So in my classroom, I shifted everything I did again. So my last 6 years of teaching, from 2016 to 2022, I made sure my students knew that they mattered, no matter what, above any academic success, achievement, that they were worth it. And the crazy thing is that those kids scored the highest in ENDA levels at two different schools for my last 6 years of teaching. There's a huge correlation between taking care of the child, and it empowers them to believe in their capabilities.
Yeah.
So we have, those two things. I don't know. I have one more, but if you want to like add in some different things or ask any other questions, then feel free to.
Go ahead with your number 3, and then I'll get into my questions for you.
Okay. So then the third catalyst was in 2021. And while I was teaching, um, and well, let me preface this first, that I did suicide prevention in the schools for my last 6 years of teaching as well. Okay. So I was doing that actively. But this last catalyst was what gave me, I guess, that permission when you know you're supposed to do something different, but you're scared to do it, right? Like we all have those things, but this was honestly the hardest day of my life. And I call it a beautifully tragic day because of what it's transformed me into and the work that I'm now doing. But in 2021, it was actually 1111. So if you're into, numbers,
Spiritual
numerology,
numbers, all the things.
yes. And that's an angel number. And my dad was actually in at the school on Veterans Day talking to my students about him, and his experience as a real life American hero, right? And talking about those stories. And little did I know, oh, it's been a minute since I've talked about this, but that my dad was actually going to take his last breaths in my classroom, in my arms, while giving a presentation. And that moment changed me forever. And I don't know if you can see this on here. This is a necklace, a butterfly necklace. It's the last gift I got from my dad, but it's so symbolic of that transformation, right? Like, again, that experience with life and death, that you've got this one opportunity to live your best life. And with all of the things that led me to this point, it was time to leave the classroom. It was time to leave the classroom because I saw a gap in what we were doing in suicide prevention, that we were waiting for a crisis to happen before we intervened. So, what if we could prevent it and proactively empower kids to believe in themselves so that we don't get to the crisis point? And I figured out that we can. And so that's honestly what I'm doing right now with my work in suicide prevention and empowering kids to believe in themselves.
Hmm. I love it. I just your entire story is so incredible and powerful, and like you said, that evolution of like having to basically turn to goo, with all
Yeah.
of the hurt and the just pain and everything that you went through in order to come out on the other side and be able to make such an incredible and important impact, especially in our youth. And I think we've all seen the just rise of mental health issues and the crisis that it is just in general in our society right now, but especially with these kids. I think, the rise of social media has definitely impacted that heavily, and online bullying and all of the things that we go through. But I I think back on your story of your son, and my son is going to be 7 here in October. I can't even imagine as a parent how I would deal with a 7-year-old child coming to me and saying, like that he was thinking about those things, like just oh my gosh, rips my heart out of my chest as a
Yeah.
parent almost.
And it happens like we've lost kids here in Utah as young as 7. And how you were saying the rise of suicides in our youth, it's actually risen 71% in the last 10 years.
That is crazy.
And so, yeah, we have all of these factors with, the social media, the online, the disconnection that is happening. And the online stuff is not going away. So it's like, hey, we've got to be proactive. So talking to your 7-year-old, even though you can't him feeling that way, lots of times kids are feeling this way and don't even talk to their parents because they don't want their parents to think less of them or think that they messed up. I was actually working with a 13-year-old this last week, and she's like, I don't want my parents to know because then they're going to think that they failed.
Mhm.
That's not a burden our kids should be feeling, that they, like, in some way, them having some situations going on means that the parent failed. So we've got to work through and figure out, how do we communicate better with our kids? How do we have these conversations? And it doesn't need to necessarily be about ending your own life, but how do you build resilience? How do you build confidence and take courageous steps every day, and build those communication and those connections with the parent and the child? And that's where it's got to start. It's got to start with the parent and the child. And then in the community, we can build this too.
Yeah. No, I think that's so important. I think about myself and I struggle with my mental health. You and I have kind of talked about it and discussed it, a few times, but even a couple weeks ago I had a major mental health, kind of breakdown, and I ended up going into the behavioral unit for a few days just to work on myself. And even as an adult, it's scary for me to call my parents and say, hey, I'm struggling and I need help. And so the fact that we're expecting these young kids that are still like trying to figure out their own feelings and thoughts and everything to be able to like do that, how do we open up those conversations with our kids? What are some of the questions that we can ask? Or if they do come to us and they say, hey, I'm struggling, what can we do? What can we say to them?
Yeah. Well, first off, before I go into that, I want to thank you for being brave and sharing that.
Yeah.
And I want you to know that you're not alone. Okay. And that you're loved, and it's okay to not be okay. This is actually a quote from one of my awesome friends, Rob Eastman, who says, it's okay to not be okay, but it's not okay to not be okay and not get the help that you need.
Mm,
And so in my book, I say asking for help is a sign of bravery,
yes.
because too many people right now are suffering in silence. And if we just opened up and said, you know what, I had a crap day, like, here's what happened.
Yep.
And you're going to find out that you're not alone in that a lot more moms are feeling this way. A lot more dads are feeling these things. And it's like, oh, so what I see on social media isn't, you know, all rainbows and, unicorns out there happening. Like, we all have our struggles with stuff. And so being open with your kids that, hey, guess what? I'm not perfect. I don't expect you to be perfect. All right. Here's like, I kind of got upset with this and I wish I would have handled it this way, instead of reacting in a negative way, like blaming someone, wanting to punch someone, or pretending it didn't exist, to going, I don't know exactly how to handle this, but here's a little quick fix. Here's a band aid thing that I did. Talking to your kids about the growth mindset. talking to them about, hey, here's what I learned from this really difficult situation. Here's the ways that it helped me to grow. Um, a lot of times as parents, no matter what age your kid is, and you've probably experienced this in this last week, a lot of times as the person who's older or supposedly wiser, right? They jump in and say, oh, well, you should do this, 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 and this. As the person in that situation, you're not ready to receive any of that or know what your next steps are.
Mhm.
So, as the person talking to someone who is struggling with their mental health, ask them, how are you feeling? Okay. How did this make you feel? Can you tell me in a little bit more detail what happened? Not jumping to like, okay, well, let's do this, this, and this, right? Letting that person tell you what's going on in that experience and saying, okay, well, this happened. What outcome do you want? Where do you want to be? And kind of go, like you've probably heard of this, like there's the gap between where you are, right? And where you want to go. And so just figuring out where that person is on their journey. And it is a journey. Like everyone always talks about a journey, right? But most people do not actually know what a hero's journey is. Like, are you familiar with that? Do you know some of the steps in a hero's journey?
No, I think it would be interesting to know those steps.
Hey, so I model all of what I've done after Joseph Campbell's hero's journey. And you can find this in any Disney movie, any Marvel movie, anything.
They
Okay.
all
Even
have the
in like,
same like steps.
they do. It has the same pattern. And so what happens is you're called on an adventure. Okay. Something happens, an event happens, and it's like the person's like, no, I didn't sign up for that. I don't want to go. They try and get out of it. But they go anyway. The heat anyway. Okay. They step out of their known world into an unknown world. And this is where a lot of people get kind of scared. They think like humans, we think we're supposed to know everything and where everything's going. The reality is that we don't know much of anything. Like we're literally living in the unknowns. Like I don't know what's going to happen when my kids come home from school, what so and so had said to them, any of that. So we live in the unknowns. And in the unknowns is where you find your growth. We see this in all of the movies, right? Where the hero's just navigating through things. So along the way, the hero is going to find a mentor. Okay. They have a mentor who guides them. They have friends. They have people who are against them. They learn new skills. They come to a point of a dark cave, right? Where they're like, I'm done. I can't do this. There is no way I can fight this monster. There's no way I can overcome this. That mentor cannot do it for them. Like your husband, your parents cannot do your mental health for you, but
Right.
they can be there to support you in believing that you're capable, right?
Mhm.
And so in that darkness, you go, do you know what? I can rise out of this. And so you step out of that cave and you're equipped with a new mindset, a new skill set, a new perspective on life, right? You've gained all these things in the unknowns, in the dark scariness, and you're like, oh my gosh, I can do this.
Mhm.
So then you're stepping back into your normal world out of these unknowns. And this is where the challenge comes. And a lot think it's in that cave. It's like, can I take what I've learned to really transform and be that hero, be that butterfly, right? That I want to be, have that transformation. And once you can take those skills and use them day to day, you are transformed. You are that hero in your own life. And then you start showing and guiding others how you did that,
Mhm.
right? Like one little step at a time, one step. Does that make sense? So basically, call to an adventure. Nope, I didn't sign up for this. Like, what? You go anyway, you find people who support you. You're going to want to quit and give up, but you're going to do it anyway. And you're going to rise up and know that everything you needed was always within you.
Mm, I
Yeah.
love that so much. And I mean, it's so interesting thinking back on some of those, dark, deep in the cave type of moments in my life. And at the moment, of course, they feel completely overwhelming and like you're never going to be able to get out of that cave. And, it's so hard. But then looking back, you see all of those things that you gain from it, the mentorship, the um just lessons within that darkness that you were able to pull yourself out. And like you said, you get that confidence, you get that resilience with every small step that you begin to take from there. I think it's so interesting, as a parent, talking about, you know showing our kids what it means to be resilient, or showing them how to deal with hard things, or showing them, that it's okay not to be perfect. I think it's very interesting as a parent who struggles with my mental health. I'm always balancing that. How can I like show my son that I'm not perfect, that I struggle with these things, because he has a lot of the same struggles that I do and I can see that already, and talk about it in a very open way with him, but also like not push my problems onto him and like protect him from some of the things that I have going on at the same time too. But I found that it's just in showing up and doing the actions, because our kids see our actions and they follow our actions, not what we're telling them.
Oh, yeah, they are smart.
Oh yeah.
They are smart. And one of the things, like, start doing the meditations. Like, I don't know if you do like mindful minutes, breathing, like go on a walk and talk with your son. Like, I do that all the time, asking the questions because we want to be heard. Just like your little one wants to be heard, we want to be loved, seen, and heard. Those are what all of us are looking for in that connection. Like, listen to a song, watch a bird. Honestly, like sometimes I just get lost watching a bird in flight, or the clouds, or seeing the sun peeking through the clouds. So many times we are too busy that we forget to be living and to be present. And if you can teach that boy some of the skills that you're learning as you're going through it, you are preparing him to not have to go through those hardships that you went through to get to this point,
Mhm.
right? And here's the thing, he still might have to, depending on his personality. There are personalities where it's like, and I'm one of those, you can tell me anything, but until I experience it and know how to move through it myself, it hasn't happened, right?
Yeah. I I think it's so important that like we talk about feeling seen and heard and valued. Those are like some of the biggest things, especially when somebody is struggling through your mental health. Like you said, we don't need the like 1, 2, 3 of here's the steps that we're going to take to get out of this situation. Sometimes we just need to be in that moment. We need to feel heard. We need to feel valued, and we need to feel understood. And I think that's hard, especially as a parent, if you're dealing with mental health, because it's like, oh my gosh, I want to get in there. I want to do the things. I want to help. Like I want to make this better for them. But sometimes like we need to let go of that control and realize that we can't fix them for them. So all we can do is be there, hear them, understand them, and validate them, because sometimes we just need validated as human beings in our
Mhm.
experiences. Even if it's something that like you as a person would look at and be like, well, that's something dumb to be this upset over. Especially with kids, I think we as adults are like, well, that's not going to matter in like 1 year from now. But to
Mm,
them, it can feel like a life or death kind of experience.
yeah. And I've seen that over and over again working with kids, right? Like, it may not seem that big of a deal to us as adults because we have a different perspective, right? We see things differently. So coming down to asking the kid, well, tell me more about that. Like, what are you seeing? Like, help me understand what your process is. And sometimes we can't say process. Like, tell me like how that made you feel, right? Explain it a little more, asking for the information and just saying, well,
Open-ended questions.
yes, yes, having that. And I loved that you brought up that as parents, we want to fix things. We're fixers. We don't want them to struggle. But one of the big things that I noticed in education with all of these kids is that parents are trying to clear the path for these kids and they're taking away the opportunities for their child to build the resilience for themselves. Because if our kids aren't building the resilience, then when something comes up, they don't know how to handle it,
Mm.
right? We learn the most through a lot of the trials that we've overcome, and we built confidence in our belief that we can do these hard things. And so we've got to remember that we've got to let our kids fall and we've got to let them fail. I always say, fail forward, fail fast, fail often.
Oh,
And
yeah.
then you get back up, right? You get back up, and that's when you figure it out.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think back on when I went into college and I grew up in a very conservative religion and was very, sheltered. And my parents did a really good job of like, having me work before I left and do certain things. But I went to college and I struggled so hard because I had had such an easy life up until
Mhm.
that point that I didn't know how to like struggle. And then I ended up failing out of college, and I definitely look back and I'm like, man, I wish I had struggled more in high school, which sounds so dumb to say now, but I really wish I had had some of those struggles to help me when I was like out on my own, figure it out a little quicker and a little easier.
Well, and it's hard as the parent because it's like, no, I don't want my child to hurt. I don't
Yeah.
want them to go through it. But now you going through and being raised how you were without those struggles, it is okay for your child to see that life isn't perfect, that they don't need to be perfect, that you're not perfect, because eventually your kid is going to figure it out anyway. Right? And so I always have conversations with my kids. I apologize to them. I'm like, "Oh, I messed up. I wish I would have said this. Like if I could go back." I apologize. I ask my kids to forgive me.
Yeah.
And that's a hard one for a lot of adults to go, "Oh, mom didn't handle that right."
Yeah.
And it's something that I practice quite a bit because it gives them that permission, not that they need the permission, but an example to go, oh, so when I'm an adult, I don't have to have it all figured out. No, you don't. Even those you think have it figured out, we're still going day to day. We might have the bigger vision, right? But in all of the details, we don't know exactly how it's all going to work out. That's why we take those skills, navigate through it, and then keep using those things that are going to work.
Yeah, absolutely. I was listening to a podcast or something the other day, and they basically said, like you place the adults in your life, whether it's teachers, parents, friends, whatever, on this pedestal as a kid. And then when you get older, you realize that maybe there were some things that happened as a kid that might kind of hurt you or cause some trauma for you or whatever. But then you also realize that that pedestal was like, not actually a thing, and that those adults in your life were going through life for the first time too, and they were
Yeah.
having to figure things out, and they were having to change and grow and go through hard crap too, and
Mhm.
I do think as a generation, we're getting better as parents about being more open with our kids about just everything in general. And I do think that's really helpful, but it's also like being open with them in the right ways.
Yes. Like, they don't need to know every,
Yeah.
but like one of the things that I say, I'm like, you guys, I haven't lived today with you yet. So I'm learning how to do today alongside with you.
Yep.
Right? And going, well, what do you want? Talking about what they want to experience. And a lot of it, like going back to before, is how do you want to feel each day? Do you want to live in fear or do you want to live in faith and have some fun? right? Because life is too short to be feeling like you're failing all the time. Like life, you should be experiencing it. And I feel like a lot of times right now, especially there's a lot of people just wandering around, not really, they're living, but they're not alive. They're
Yeah.
not finding something each day to create and bring joy and happiness, right? And it could be a little bit as going out on a walk and jamming out to a song or doing a dance party. I do dance parties in my kitchen,
Yeah.
like doing something small for yourself every single day as the parent and showing your kids that you are working on yourself. They are watching you, like we talked about. They are watching what you do, not necessarily what you say, because if those don't align, then it's not being authentic.
Mhm.
Like they're saying, wait, there's a disconnect here, and we lose the trust of our child if we are not walking and talking the path that we're telling them to do. And
Absolutely. So big. I talk about that quite often on here. Like one of my things is working out. For my
mhm,
mental health, I've learned that that's a super super important thing for me. And so I go to the gym every day. And it's like yesterday my son had his first day of school, first day of first grade, and he had a half day. So as soon as he came home, we went and ate and then we went to the gym. And like on half days, on weekends, on whatever, he's at the gym with me because he knows that's my time, that it's important to me
mhm,
to be healthy in my body and my mind. And now he's like so comfortable there. He like walks around like he owns the place because it's just it's part of our routine, part of our rituals, and he understands that that's something that's really important for both of us.
yeah, and it is, and it's showing them, it's teaching them how to do life, how to live life, and that there are going to be struggles along the way, and it's okay. Like we work through it. We have our team of people who are with us and for us. And you're showing him like you're doing a podcast. There, I don't know if you're familiar with Ed Milet.
Mhm.
He does a podcast, but he says one of the ways that parents are abusing kids is not living their dreams. Telling their kids, "Oh, you can do anything you want to. You can be anything you want to." And then the parent is miserable every single day just going through the routines of stuff. So choosing to show your child you can do it. It doesn't need to look a certain way. There is no right or wrong way of how a family works and functions. It's what's best for you and your family at that stage, right? It's going to shift and change through the seasons of life. And it's important to show your kids this.
Absolutely. I love that so much, and I harp on that on this podcast so much, but, all my listeners are probably like, "Oh my gosh, here we go again," but I think it's so important as parents for us to realize that when we are happy, when we are good, it reflects on our children,
Mhm.
and that's why we need to take care of ourselves. We need to, follow our own dreams. We need to put ourselves in the right places and environments and relationships and things like that. And I mean, even you see the cycles that continue within families in like abusive relationships. There's been like a whole trend around the new movie that's out. It ends with us, but like the grandmother chose an abusive husband. So then the mother chose an abusive husband, and then the wife chose an abusive husband. And like those cycles continue in our families until we choose to be the ones to say, nope, it ends here with us.
Yeah. Well, and a lot of the work that I am doing is I want to shift generations. And when you heal yourself, you're actually healing 7 generations forward, 7 generations back. So a lot of the things, especially with my daughter, I'm like, no, I am doing so much inner work right now so that she does not have to go through some of those things that I went through, those self doubts, those insecurities, the feeling that you're not enough. Like she is seriously the most confident 13-year-old eighth grader and just because she's watching me do these things, right? Like you can, and that's Ed Milet again, be the one. There is a one in every family. Are you going to be the one who shifts it? And I know for me, it's yes. Clearly for you, it's yes. Right. And a lot of people think, oh my gosh, I got to do something huge. You don't have to do something huge because it's those little day in, day out things that you do that create the big things because it's consistent. Like a one and done thing will never last. But when you truly create the habits, that's when it shifts. That's when it changes. Like starting to do these little things, these morning routines, this gratitude, right? Talking to your kids about feelings. Like there's no good or bad feelings. Feelings are feelings. Like I actually love the new Inside Out. Have you watched
I
that with
haven't
me?
watched the new one yet, but
Okay.
I love the
So
original one.
yeah, it's great because it talks about bringing in these other ones. We're going to have new feelings and emotions come up as we go through life. And it's not good or bad, wrong or right. It's what is. And so going, okay, this is how I'm feeling. Asking, why am I feeling this way? All right, because of this, or thinking that it's supposed to look a certain way. And it's not.
Yeah. I think that's so interesting. I'm writing a book right now about healing after trauma through sexual assault, and it's definitely interesting, like having to walk yourself through that process, because I think we do a lot of that thinking and that kind of automatic systems processing without
Mhm.
even like, a second thought about it. But like when you're actually trying to like break these cycles within yourself or whatever, it's like you have to like consciously stop what you're doing and be like, okay, I'm feeling a certain way. And sometimes we don't even know the words to put to our feelings because they haven't been explained to us. And then it's like, okay, so I'm realizing that I'm feeling that way. What is it making me think? Well, it's making me think that I'm not worthy of love. I'm not, whatever those kind of story attachments that we put to those feelings. And then where did that come from? Well, is there actual evidence for that point or is there not, or are we just kind of thinking or focusing on like the one or two things that make it us feel that way, when really if we look at all the evidence, there's so much more evidence against that thought and feeling. But
Mhm.
it's like so much to go through that like we don't do that automatically. It has to be like a actual, I'm going to sit down, I'm going to think about this, I'm going to shift the way I'm thinking, and like really putting that effort and energy into it.
Yeah. Well, and what you're kind of referencing, I don't know if you have read Loving What Is by Byron Katie. So you were basically walking through, the four steps. Is this true? Is this really true? Like, who would I be without this thought? And a lot of it goes back to how do I want to feel? Like, I can hold on to this negative thought, this negative experience, and I can stay in this for the rest of my life, right? Like, and I bring it back to the hero's journey. I can stay in this cave forever. The darkness will let me stay there. It welcomes me, right? It lets me stay there. And there's a lot of people where it's the misery loves company, right? The
And it
complaining,
becomes
the blaming,
comfortable.
it does. It becomes your new normal,
Yeah.
right? And so it's like, okay, well, if I want to stay in this pessimistic place my whole life and blame a situation that I didn't have control over. Because a lot of these things, and especially when it comes to abuse, right? Whether physical, sexual, um, the verbal abuse as a child, whatever it is, that was not your choice. You were put in a situation that you didn't have control over. And we can't change the past as to what happened, but what we can change is who we decide to be in spite of whatever trauma happened to us. And a lot of people, like with what you've been through, with what I've been through, like people would be fine. Like I could justify anything and be like, well, that's why
Yep.
I'm an alcoholic hanging out on the couch doing jack crap, right? Like it's justified. And a lot of people stay there and make it normalized. But I don't want to be that. Like, I want to be that one who says, you know what? I can rise above adversity. Like, I can't change what happened, but maybe I can support someone else who's been through that or who is going through some of those, right? How do I want to feel? Who do I want to be? I don't want my past to define who I am right now or who I choose to be in the next week, in the next year, or for my child, right? And so it's a conscious choice. It's deciding who and what you want to be, right? And I believe that we are a being, right? Living a human experience, right? Like, we have a soul inside of us. I'm not this body, I'm not this mind, but I get this life to live right here, right now. And I want to, one, have fun, and two, make a difference, right? Like, that's how I choose to show up every day. Now, are there times where it's not like that? Yeah. Like, I'm in my sweats, we're eating Cheetos and watching a show, and it's totally fine. It is okay. Like, you gotta ebb and flow with the moments.
Yeah, absolutely. And I always tell people it's like a constant journey. Like it never ends. There's
Mhm.
always like you feel like you're on the other side and then something happens to bring you right back to the start again and you have to do it all over again. And
Yeah.
but it gets easier the more you do it and the more you build confidence, the more you build resilience.
Mhm.
And it's so interesting because see your journey and I think of my journey and how once you go through those things, you can kind of look back at it with some level of like appreciation. And it also allows you to use that experience to teach and grow and help others along their journey too. And that's such a magical thing, that empowerment that comes from taking something so raw and vulnerable and turning it into like helping others. Because I think, especially as women, especially as moms, like we have that innate need to help others. And so it really helps us fulfill that part of just like who we are and our being.
Well, and I love that. And like, you brought up a couple of things. Like, so yeah, like the hero's journey, you're going to have cycles over and over again, right? And it becomes easier as you learn. But if you're not learning, guess what? You're going to come up against that same wall over and over again until you learn the lesson. And if you're like, why does this keep happening? Well, keep asking yourself, why does this keep happening? Right? And dig a little bit deeper. Uh, and we've mentioned resilience quite a few times on here, but I want to give you my definition of resilience. And it's taken from Dr. Taryn Marie, and I kind of shift it and add on to it. So most people think resilience is bouncing back. I disagree, because you will never be back to that same person that you were before that event, before that trauma, right? You're not the same person. You've been changed. So resilience is bouncing forward and moving through with hope and optimism. All right. Like, it is bouncing forward and moving through. You're not going to be that same person you were. Like, and a lot of people say, oh, well, get back. Well, there's that version of me has actually died. Like, and that's in the hero's journey too. Like, there's that death and that rebirth.
Mhm.
We die and we live and are reborn in so many new situations over and over again with things. And I think a lot of people get caught on not wanting to change, wanting it to go back to what it was. Well, it doesn't happen that way. It just can't, and we shouldn't, because we should be evolving and growing.
I love that, and I think that's such a good point. As somebody who loves someone that's going through something hard, it can be, like, easy for us to be like, "Well, why don't you just get over it?" "It's been so many years," or, "Well, you're not the same person, that you were before it happened." Of course not. Like, that's
Yeah, you're right. I'm
you're
not.
right, that's not gonna
I'm
happen.
not.
So it's like learning to love the person through the new version of them that's becoming in that experience.
Yeah. Yep, it's in every version, and learning to love those new versions of yourself as you uncover those things, as you become truly like your own hero, right? More confident in what you are doing and what you are creating and how you want to show up.
Yeah. And I love that you say you becoming your own hero because I think that's so beautiful. And it's the entire premise of your nonprofit, which I think is incredible. And actually, my partner and I were just having this conversation the other day because I was trying to explain some of the things that I need, to help with my mental health and some of the challenges that I'm going through from him. And he said, "Well, I can't do it for you." And I said, "No, I don't expect you to do it for me. This is my own thing that I need to deal with. But as a person who loves me, you will do things to help support me in the ways that I can and need to be supported."
Yeah, and it's support. Like, so I loved how you differentiated between help and support. And there was a couple points that you made. Okay, so help, like if I need help, then I'm feeling helpless, right? And not empowered. But if I'm just asking for support and guidance and mentorship along the way for me to believe in myself, that is empowering, right? That's empowering. And so many times like in my life, like well, I had a car accident last year too. So like I had another like thing that happened, and my husband always wanted to like do things for me and all of this stuff, and I'm like, "No, I've got to save me. You've got to let me struggle through this and figure some things out. And when I need some support from you, I'm going to ask specifically, hey, here's what I'm looking for. Here's what would support me in this or this. Can you do X, Y, or Z? Like, not do it for me, be alongside me. Because just like with the hero's journey, that mentor cannot do it for you. Nobody can do it for you. You have to find it within you that you are your own hero. And the cool thing is once you dive more into, some of the spiritual aspects of things, there is nothing outside of you that you need. Everything is within you. And a lot of it comes back to um, how the way we think, right? And then the way we make ourselves feel because of those thoughts. And then the actions we then take because of those thoughts and those feelings. And it's a cycle that's either going to spiral us down or a cycle that's going to go up, knowing we're going to have some dips, but that we're on the road that we want in this journey.
Yeah, I love it. Beautiful. So, wrapping things up and kind of
Yeah.
going back to the beginning here. So, this all started from your son's experience. As his, mother and support, what did you do to support him from that kind of point A where he was, dark and deep in that cave to where he is now as a grown man following his dreams and doing the things?
One of the biggest things is I realized that I could not do this on my own. Like our family could not. So we got the mental health support that we needed. He did have to take medication for a while. He was seeing a therapist. We worked with his teachers, his counselors, all of it. It was a team effort. And I know sometimes that's not accessible. I get that. I know that. But start reading books on parenting. The book that honestly saved his life, changed the way we parented, saved our marriage, is the 5 love languages of children.
Mm,
Okay, so a lot of times, yes, kids need all of the love. They need physical touch, they need words of affirmation, they need gifts, they need quality time, and they need acts of service. They need all of this. But one or two is going to rise up where they really feel that love, because it's like talking different languages. If someone's speaking Spanish and someone's speaking English, there's a disconnect in the words that are being said. So it's not translating. If you can figure out your child's love language and do that every single day, I promise you, you will see a shift in how you view that child. And if you're upset and like mad with your child, because there were so many times where I was like, I just want to close the door and ignore him. And you guys, I did. Okay. But when I was feeling more angry at him, I knew I was not showing him the love that he needed.
Mhm.
Right? Because he didn't know. And that boy, now a man, he still is like, Mom, will you scratch my back? All the time. All of the time. So we're teaching them how to ask for love and how to receive it.
Mhm.
Right? And so doing that, and really it was every single day. It took about 2 years for us to think, well, is this working? Like, is this shifting? So you're going to want to quit as the parent. But I promise you that if you quit when they're little, their teenage years are going to be way harder because
Mhm.
they have a lot bigger attitudes as teenagers, right? But if you've built that communication and that understanding that, look, mom's on your team, dad's on your team, we're in this together. I'm not against you, I'm for you. Like, this is our journey together, and I want you to believe in yourself. So, I would say that is a huge thing. I do a lot of different stuff. I have two different books that I've now created because of the experiences I've been through and what we've seen in our own child and students that I've taught, clients that I've worked with, and just really starting from the beginning of teaching them that this journey, like, teach your kids there's a journey. You're not going to want to go on some things, and you can stay blaming everyone forever, or you can choose to go, do you know what? That's not who I want to be.
Yeah. I love it. Well, that's kind of a good place to wrap up. I just wanted to highlight one point that she said there is as a parent or as a person going through mental health struggles, like the there's a lot of it that we can do for ourselves, and then there's sometimes that we need to ask for help from others too. Therapy is huge for me. I just got back on with my therapist, and meds are super important. So never feel afraid or, shameful about having to do either of those things. I think that is a really important point.
I do too. Like, there are tools there for us to lean on. You don't have to do this on your own. Find others who are going to empower you to stay on this path, like, who support you in it, who don't shame you in it. One of my biggest things, I do cold plunging all the time. I love that. It's the reset of my nervous system. Find those people who believe in what you're doing and will help you to be part of that experience with you.
Yep. Love it. Yeah, I think it's so interesting just that like mind body connection, like reconnection that happens when you do something like cold plunging or whatever. Very interesting. Well, you mentioned your books. Tell us
Mhm.
about your books. Tell us about your programs that you have going on, where we can find you, all of the things.
Okay, so I have two books. I guess I grabbed them. This was my first book. Okay, so if you guys see all the red sneaker stuff, it started with this book that I wrote for my students. I didn't know it would turn into this movement of hope. Um, but really, it goes through the hero's journey in very accessible ways for kids to understand. Like, I'm just opening up a page. So it's like, this moment could be the moment that changes your life forever. It has a quote that supports it. And then it gives you little things that you can do. Show appreciation to improve relationships. Bring more positive moments into your life. And so it goes through 52 weeks, so a whole year of stuff. I have workbooks that go with this for teens, for parents as well. And then this one is my cutest new little book, Becoming Superheroes. And it breaks it down, like, the hero's journey for, like, your cute little 7-year-old into a way that they can see the
Nice.
hero's journey, right? Like, so they can see themselves. You're going to have brave beginnings. You're going to face challenges. You're going to learn and grow. You're going to help others, and you're going to stay positive. And then it just goes through little things. So, where they can do that. This says, choose friends who bring happiness into your day, and gives little tips. One, laugh together, share toys, listen and talk. So it's broken the hero's journey down into ways that the littles can start implementing them. And I have workbooks for the littles and parents. We have stuff that's going to be getting approved by the State Board of Education to be in the schools.
Right.
We are doing a suicide prevention training on September 10th, which is World Suicide Prevention Day. So we're doing that here locally in Davis County. You can find information by following me, Rise with Alysia or the Hope Hero on Instagram, and then Alysia Butler on Facebook, thehopehero.com, thehopeherofoundation.org. We'll have updates with that. And we are going to be starting some in-person, like I said, the suicide prevention. We're going to be doing that about every other month. We're going to be starting in person for whole families, right? Where we're going to be going through the hero's journey and the compass of learning about communication, connection, building confidence, and having courage. So it's, you come together, your little 7-year-old will be with other 7-year-olds, right? And learning from someone to guide them on how to build confidence while you and your partner, sometimes it's going to be, the caregivers together. Sometimes it's going to be, the mom's here, the dad's here. There's going to be, I guess, depending on who's there, right? And what needs to happen, but we want to build community together. And so that's what we're creating. There will be online portals, lots of good stuff coming. And I'm just excited because that's been the disconnect. It's in mental health, it's been a one and done, but there hasn't really been a consistent thing that everyone in the family can go to. So I want to create what I wish was available for me, 10 years ago, 15 years ago.
Support for the support systems. I love it.
Yep.
Love it.
Yeah.
Well, so many amazing things. If you guys are listening to the audio version of this, you can view the video version too and check it out so that you can see the cute little illustrations and everything she's got in the books. They look amazing. So thank you so much for coming on, for sharing, being so vulnerable. What an amazing story, and you're doing amazing things. So I'm so grateful that we got to have you on. Thank you, Elysia.
Well, thank you so much, Carrie. And I just appreciate you. And I'm proud of you, for showing up brave every single day. So you've really helped so many people with your vulnerability today as well. So thank you.
Thank you for joining us today on the Mompreneur podcast. And if you like this episode as much as we did, give us a follow so we can invite you back every Wednesday. And of course, share it on all your socials. Being a confident mompreneur means uncovering your strengths and struggles so you can dive in and learn how your next steps could be your greatest.